crime of a truly horrific nature that, as George told us, has really gripped people and gotten hold of their attention, you certainly might be able to make the argument, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did, that it's going to be very difficult to get a fair trial for Josh Komisarjevsky. So I think that might be the venue. I'm not sure they might try something like that. Yeah.
So, again, Hayes convicted on 16 of 17 counts in the deadly Cheshire home invasion. Of those, 6 are capital felonies. We do know 3 are deaths so far, so we're just waiting to hear what the other 3 are going to be.
Let's send it back out to George Colley and get his thoughts on all of this as we await the 3 more capital penalty felony counts. George?
Yes, Logan. This has been, as Sarah was just saying, it was 16 of 17 counts that this jury had found Stephen Hayes guilty on. 6 of these capital counts. The 3 that we are waiting right now to hear from are the our capital felony murder of a kidnapping of Jennifer, Hayley, and Michaela Petit. Let me tell you, the Petit family has been here every single day in this trial. Dr. Petit, his sister Hannah, you've seen almost every single morning on the news, you've seen almost every single evening, them walking from their car, their heads held high. They have been very, very tough through this whole process. Jennifer Hawke-Petit's parents, Reverend Hawke, he has been here every single day. Cindy Hawke, the sister of Jennifer, just left after day 2 of these jury deliberations. And this family has waited over 3 long years. And I'm just hearing right now that death for Stephen Hayes on 5 of 6 capital felony counts. This has been... nobody really knew what was going to happen. These first few questions, I just got this. All 6 counts, all 6 capital felony counts, Stephen Hayes has been put to death by a jury of 7 women and 5 men. This has been an absolutely extraordinary case. Some people have called the trial of the century here in Connecticut. It's been over almost 3.5 years since that night, July 23rd, 2007, that Stephen Hayes and Joshua Komisarjevsky entered the Petit home, hit Dr. William Petit with a bat, and then terrorized his family for the next 6 or 7 hours. The state has been in shock because of this. This trial has absolutely transfixed the country. We are hearing from people who were overseas that are reporting on this, that are saying that they are hearing about this trial in Europe. And as we just said, breaking news, Stephen Hayes has been found sentenced to death on all 6 capital felony charges. Back to you.
All right, George, thanks. We're joined by Andrew Julian, so we're getting word 6 of the 6 are death counts. Andrew, break those down for us so we know exactly what he's been charged with.
Okay, the 6 counts that Stephen Hayes has been convicted to the death penalty of are murder of 2 or more persons, and there were 3 in this case. That was Jennifer Hawke-Petit, Michaela, and Hayley. Murder of a person under 16, that's Michaela. Murder of a kidnapped person, that's Jennifer Hawke-Petit. Murder of a kidnapped person for Hayley. Murder of a kidnapped person for Michaela. And the 6th and final count was murder of a sexually assaulted person, and that had to do with Stephen Hayes' sexual assault of Jennifer Hawke-Petit. So on all 6 of those counts, which are all capital counts in the state of Connecticut, Stephen Hayes has been convicted of a death penalty.
I think it's interesting to take this case, because we've been following this, obviously, for a very long time, and you take the governor's race, because one of the things that people were talking about for the governor's race is Dan Malloy, who's now going to be the next governor. That's if Tom Foley doesn't try to make a case for a recount of some sort. But he's against the death penalty, Dan Malloy. He still won if it stays where it is. But Dan Malloy had also said that he's not going to do anything to change the outcome of the verdict if it was, in fact, death, and it is now. But you may recall before that Democrats had tried to push through some legislation that would abolish the death penalty here in Connecticut, and Governor Jody Rell vetoed that. So it's just interesting, I think, to kind of take the situation that we have with the governor and now the situation that we have here with the Cheshire home invasion and talk about it with respect to the whole death penalty.
Well, I think we'll definitely see this coming up in the political arena, because Danielle Malloy had to do some tap dancing around this issue during the debate, because what he said was that he opposes the death penalty and he wants the death penalty abolished in Connecticut, but it would not apply to this particular case because it would be after the fact. Well, in the world of real life, if the state of Connecticut were to abolish the death penalty in a year or 2, it would be difficult. It would be an interesting legal argument to make that you could actually go forward with an execution while the death penalty was illegal in the state, even if it was retroactive to before the time when that law was passed. The defense in this case actually raised that issue. They said the legislature of Connecticut said there shouldn't be a death penalty, so they tried to make that an issue in trial. Now, the judge dismissed that issue, saying that that's an issue for the legislature to decide. That's not an issue for the courts to decide. As of today, as of right now, there is a death penalty in Connecticut. But this certainly does open up a political question on that issue.
Does. So we're still awaiting the other counts. There's about 10 more counts to go, but at this point, it doesn't really matter. I mean, he's been convicted on 16 of 17 counts, so we just talked about the 6 here, the main focus of this, which was the death penalty.
We've been talking a lot on our website, ctnow.com, that the recent poll, as you were saying, Andrew, showed some Connecticut residents who oppose the death penalty think Hayes should be executed. The Quinnipiac University poll shows 65% of responders support the death penalty in general, and that's up 4% from 2 years ago and is the highest show of support in a decade. Meantime, 76% of responders said Hayes should be put to death. So it's pretty interesting to see how people have changed their views because of this case.
The Cheshire home invasion trial is the kind of case that people are going to talk about for decades. It's the case that's going to change the way people view the death penalty in Connecticut, and to an extent it already has. I mean, the two things we heard consistently during this trial were if the horrific nature of this crime did not warrant the death penalty, then why do you have a death penalty at all?
Right.
That was one of the things we heard. And the other things we heard, as you see from those numbers in the Quinnipiac poll, people saying things like, well, in general, I'm not so sure I believe in the death penalty, but in this case, I can see it. We heard that a lot. We heard that from a lot of different people, from a lot of different types of people who were rooted in different views. So, you know, the legislature was able to pass a ban on the death penalty. I'm not sure they're going to be able to do that if they try that again this coming session.
Andrew, I wonder if you want to just take people through the process. If they're just joining us, Stephen Hayes has been convicted of death in all 6 of the capital felony cases. We've been talking a little bit about what the jury actually physically had to do, even if they made their decision that he should be put to death, because there were a number of forms, lots of pages, and they had to go through step by step each count, mitigating versus aggravating circumstances.
Yeah, it's a complicated process. It's a 4-step process, you know, where the first thing they weigh are what's called statutory mitigating factors, and they were impaired mental capacity, impaired ability to conform one's conduct to law. That basically means you didn't have a sense that what you were doing at the time was illegal. Again, that speaks to your your mental outlook at the time of the crime.
Right.
And the third, which was in several of the counts, not in all of them, was the inability to foresee that your conduct would cause the risk of death. So those are your statutory mitigating factors. Now, if they find any of those, unanimously find that there is a statutory mitigating factor, that would stop the process, and that would be a life sentence. Now, if they find none of them, we go to step 2, which is aggravating factors. Was this committed in a particularly cruel and heinous way? So let's say, and clearly they did, find that they were aggravating factors. Then the next step is you go to the non-statutory mitigating factors, the ones you discussed earlier. Was there a history of substance abuse? Did he have problems in his childhood? Was he led in some way to a life that you got a reason to doing this sort of thing? If you find that there were any of those, then you would proceed to the 4th step, which is you weigh the aggravating against the mitigating factors. If you find the aggravating outweighs the mitigating, it's death. If you find the mitigating outweighs the aggravating, it's life in prison without the possibility of parole.
So Stephen Hayes once again sentenced to death for the home invasion on all 6 counts that carried that death sentence. Took the jury, well, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then they come back just before noon here on Monday. So George Colley's been following this as well. And George, what's happening there outside of the courtroom?